counting down to a watershed election.
Very warm welcome.
Eyewitness News, Elections 2024.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I'm Jane Dutton. Welcome to EWN Live. Can you imagine this time next week how much has happened? And we know how long a week is in politics. We would have voted in possibly the most important elections, unpredictable. Some are even saying seismic. Hopefully we'll get to know what the next 5 years will be looking like. It's a very difficult time in South African politics. 30 years of freedom has come at great cost to many. Underpinning it is knowing that as a developing country, our economy is faring the worst. So you can understand why something like 35% of people still have no idea who they're going to vote for. To that end, most of the political parties are out this weekend. They're campaigning, trying to get your vote. We're going to be focusing on the ANC and the EFF today with my colleague, Tembekile.
Jane, thank you very much for that. And as Jane was saying, it's a big day today for the EFF and the ANC, because when you go back to the last general election in 2019, Jane, the ANC and the EFF got about 70% of votes in that year. This year, we're hearing that possibly the ANC may drop below the 50% mark. If they do, it'll be a historic moment in this country's democracy. What then happens? Do we see a national coalition? The DA says if that national coalition is formed by the ANC and EFF, then the country is doomed. We've also seen some last-minute pushes in terms of legislation. The NHI signed into law by the president of the country and the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa. We've also just yesterday seen the signing into law of a bill to address gender-based violence. But will all of that be enough to take the ANC to a point where it can confidently secure a majority, where it doesn't actually have to negotiate with any other party to form government? Well, all of that will be decided, as Jane was saying, this time next week, hopefully.
And as we wait for the politicians to start speaking, before we go over to the ANC, let's go over to Limpopo and listen to what the EFF is up to before their Commander-in-Chief takes to the stage.
Amansa! Kaluza macam-macam. Amakwela! Kayangena wa President CIC Ringo Machingozi Ifuma Gamnandi. Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Yeah! Yeah!
Julius Malema,
Visuals coming from the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Limpopo from the EFF rally there. We've got Malaika Malatsi with us in the studio, researcher at the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation, who knows a lot about the parties that we're going to be talking about today. And firstly, welcome. Tell us the importance of being at this stadium today.
So I think for the EFF, Jane, it's a very symbolic stadium to be at. Peter Mokaba Stadium obviously is named after the former leader of the South African Youth Congress, which later became the ANC Youth League following the unbanning of the ANC in 1990. And Peter Mokaba is a very important figure in the history of the ANC and certainly of the ANC Youth League. And so I think there's something quite very symbolic that the EFF would have chosen Peter Mokaba Stadium as the stadium.
Julius Malema, right?
Even Julius Malema, exactly.
One of his role models.
Exactly, sort of his role models. And in fact, he's often been likened to Peter Mokaba, right? That he's very militant politics. He has also himself said that, he sees Peter Mokaba as his role model. So I think it's very deeply symbolic at a very personal level for Julius, but also generally just very symbolic with it being, and Peter Mokaba generally, that region being a stronghold of the ANC historically. I think the EFF is sending a very strong message about that to say we are coming at you in your own, stronghold, in your own home ground. But I mean, Peter Mokaba is a 46,000 capacity stadium. And the ANC is having its own rally at Soccer City, which is about 94, almost 95,000, double the size, right? So I mean, I think even at that, or at least for the ANC, there's an aerial battle happening there, right? Yep. That if the ANC can manage to fill FNB Stadium or Soccer City, which it hasn't been there in quite a long time. The ANC has not been having a lot of rallies in Soccer City over the last few years, and I mean, I think the fact that it's right. And so I think the fact that it's taking this battle to Soccer City and it's doing this in a Gauteng province that is, it's standing on shaky ground here, So I think psychologically for the ANC, if it can feel Soccer City, there's going to be like a bit of a psychological boost for this province in particular. So I think that it's very symbolic, the stadiums that they have chosen, because they could have gone anywhere else. But the fact that they have chosen Soccer City in particular in a Gauteng, where the ANC is hemorrhaging support and where it's hanging on by the skin of its teeth, and for the EFF to choose Peter Mokaba, where symbolically, this is an ANC stronghold, but also the history between Julius and Peter Mokaba, but Peter Mokaba and the ANC. I think there's a lot of symbolism happening in this.
But even, we'll talk about Gauteng in a while because that's where Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the ANC, will be. But when you look at Limpopo as well, Malaika, what's interesting is the EFF draws its greatest support, or has drawn great support from Limpopo. It's Julius Malema's home province, etc. But it's also one of those provinces where the ANC is almost always guaranteed a good showing electorally. And
I think also recent developments are also very worrying for the EFF. So following the 2021 local government election, the EFF got rid of Josi Butani, who was the EFF leader, provincial leader at the time of the EFF, and he later resurfaced in the ANC. And Joseph Butani has been doing a lot of work with the ANC. He has gotten a lot of former EFF members back to the ANC. And interestingly, one of the things that has emerged out of that in the last few weeks is that you are beginning to see something that was never really there in Limpopo, which is election violence in Limpopo, right? And inter-party violence. So you know that about a few days ago, in fact, on Sunday, right, the ANC and the EFF clashed in Seshego, which is Julius's home as well. So they clashed in Seshego, and it led to the shooting of 2 people, including a 9-year-old little girl, right, at these campaigns of the ANC and the EFF. But also, if you just follow the kinds of conversation and discourse between the ANC and the EFF in Limpopo, there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of, you know, violence and militancy in that. And so I think Limpopo has become a very interesting province to watch. Historically, as you correctly say, Tamigile, it was always an ANC stronghold, and we knew the ANC would win there. And even as the EFF, has made a showing in Limpopo, the ANC has never been threatened that much there.
Because they used to, historically, the ANC in Limpopo, for people, if you've not been following it, they were never below, for example, the 65% mark.
Yes. In fact, Limpopo, Northern Cape, the ANC has got those provinces where it was always a given that they are going to get these provinces, the Free State, and it's always been a given. And I think that the new dynamic of Josie Butani there coming back to the ANC is going to have some impact on that. I mean, the fact that
the appeal leaving the EFF for the ANC, I mean, what's behind that, and how significant is that? I mean, obviously, that stings.
So it's quite very interesting, right? Because when you listen to the EFF, including Julius himself, the indication is that Josie Butani was removed as the provincial leader of the EFF because the EFF did not perform well in the 2021 local government election. Yet, it's almost as if it's a contradiction. The same Josie Butani has been able to bring so many members of the EFF into the ANC, so much so that the ANC was able to retain 10 in Seshego, which was in 2016 had been won by the EFF. So you do see also this, the strength of this Josie Butani, which the EFF wants to say, did not translate into much votes in 2021. And we don't know how that's going to look like for the ANC, but certainly based on the recent developments and the number of people that Josie Butani, by the admission of Julius himself, has been able to bring back into the ANC, is quite very interesting to look at.
How concerning is, I mean, obviously any sort of violence is concerning, but how concerning is it that we're seeing this festering there, and how bad can it get?
It's very, very concerning. And I mean, I think violence, violence is not a light switch that you can put on and off.
No.
Once it begins, it sets parameters for more violence. Violence generally begets violence. Right. KZN was not always what it was. It starts like this, and it gets worse, and it gets even more intense. And I think what also happens is that both the ANC and the EFF, by the way, are not necessarily doing very, very well, both of them. And if you look at the polls and the research coming out, both of them are standing on a bit of shaky ground. And even where the ANC is guaranteed to win, you are seeing a hemorrhaging of support. I think the introduction of the MK party has also, research is saying that the party that is being affected the most is in particular the EFF. And so as this contest happens and there's this contestation of more of resources and the pie is starting to get smaller, that's also when you start to see a festering of more violence.
We talk a lot about the political leaders and inciting violence, but once that is sort of kicked off, will they be able to stop it?
No, you can't. And that is the thing. That is the danger, There's actually, and it's a very interesting thing because there's a scholar in Zimbabwe, Professor Lloyd Sachigonyi. So he writes a book. It's titled When a State Turns on Its Citizen. And it basically gives a reflection of 60 years of institutionalized violence in Zimbabwe. And he makes the argument that he's making the reflection that we are making, Demigile, to say the problem with violence, and often it's with intra-party violence that then becomes inter-party violence. The problem with that is that once it starts and kicks in, even when it's no longer the individuals who may have instigated it, it becomes institutionalized in the institution itself. And so what happens is that even even if the people who are fighting in Limpopo, the individuals who are part of it, they've normalized a culture now that this is how the organizations, campaign. This is what campaigning and fighting for terrain is starting to look like. And I think that's something that we ought to be worried about.
So the ANC program is kicking off here in Gauteng. We're going to see if the stadiums are full to capacity. We were saying they would like to get the numbers of about 90,000 plus, but let's have a look and see how it's playing out there.
Thank you very much.
All right. You were saying, Malika, that they've
I
managed
think
to fill it?
I mean, it's, I mean, what we've seen, that's, I mean, you know, the angle that we were being shown about an hour ago, the numbers were standing at about 45,000. So it looks like it's filling. But I mean, we also did get information that part of the problem is that they were trying to prevent the situation that happened in Mpumalanga with the stampede and
That's
so on.
right.
So what they are doing at soccer cities, that they're actually busing people to Nazareth, and then from Nazareth they're being shuttled from there then into Soccer City, and the indication is that that may have been why there was a bit of time. But I mean, we are seeing now the visuals. It looks like the stadium is quite well. There's a good attendance of that. Yeah, yeah.
So good attendance at rallies gets talkability.
Yeah.
But does a full stadium translate into better electoral performance? Because the ANC has filled stadiums over the years, but we've seen a steady decline year on year. I mean, 2019, that was 57%, down from about 65% in 2014.
No, and I think we must be very clear that the issue of stadium, you know, we call them stadiumology, stadium politics. It's nothing more than aerial battles, and it's nothing more than really symbolism. It does not really have a bearing on, I mean, take for example, like, as you correctly say, the ANC can fill stadiums, and that does not necessarily translate into numbers. And the same is true about the EFF, right? I don't think there's any party that is as good at mobilizing people as the EFF, and not just in the stadiums, but even, you know, with protests and with marches and so on. But that does not necessarily always translate into votes, right? But what it does at least communicate, right, is the mood. It does give us a mood into, you know, what is the popular conversation, what is the at the heart of discourse right now. But remember also that you can't really gauge how many of the people who are at the stadium are registered voters, because we also have that, right? I mean, we saw even with the previous election, 2019, so many young people going to EFF, you know, stadium, to the EFF rallies and to EFF programs, and it turns out that that cohort had the least number of registrations and the least number of voting. So I don't think that alone should be a thing that can give us a determination as to whether or not there will be any.
And you're hearing
votes.
about how many ANC voters are not going to vote. So that they support it, but they're not actually going to vote this
And
year.
I mean, I don't think that's new. So it's not new. I mean, it happened even with the 2016 local government elections.
And
it
that's a
happened
problem,
in
isn't it?
2021.
That they can't get them.
But I mean, I think
past the line.
also on one hand, it's a problem for the ANC, but perhaps it's also a much bigger problem for democracy, right? Because it's communicating something. Because if ANC voters or historically ANC voters say we are no longer going to vote for the ANC, that communicates that there is disgruntlement about the ANC itself. But then it also says that the same voters are not, you know, they don't believe that there is an alternative to the ANC, that they would rather withhold the vote than vote for any other.
It reflects poorly also on the opposition parties.
Exactly. And it reflects very poorly on the opposition parties, but it says something about the growing disengagement with the political process itself. And it's something that should be concerning, right? It should be concerning to us when, you know, because firstly, if people are saying we are not going to vote, we are on the voters' roll, but we're not going to vote. What that also means is that there's going to be lesser people who are going to be voting.
And as our politics becomes more fragmented with the increasing number of political parties and independents, it's going to make that a whole lot harder too.
It does, but I mean, I think one of the other dynamics that it probably introduces, which I think we've not really paid a lot of attention to, right, is on the role and the growth of community-based organizations and forums, right, such as your forum for service delivery. We are seeing a lot of those kinds of political parties, those former community-based organizations, entering into the party political system and getting into elections. And that I think is an important move for democracy.
Quite a statement, isn't it?
And for everyone just watching, to set the context, you're looking at visuals from the FNB Stadium. This is how an ANC rally, the program would always begin. An interfaith service at the beginning. We're also likely to hear those usual messages of support from the alliance partners, i.e. COSATU and the SACP. We're still with Malika here in studio, myself and Jane Dutton, with Eyewitness News continuing coverage of the two main rallies today. The ANC Siyangoba rally, a last push, a show of force, if you will, before the election on Wednesday. The EFF gathering for the Tela Tupa rally. That's happening at the Pitamokaba Stadium in Limpopo, and we'll keep across both events as we go through the programs. Malika, on the ANC, this prediction that they will fall below 50%. Realistically, though, what are the chances of a jump from 57% to, let's say, 48%?
Look, I mean, we've seen that happen in some provinces. We've seen that happen in Gauteng, a jump of that significant percentage, right? We've seen that between 2016 and what is it, the 2014 and the 2019 election. We've seen that in the provinces. But I mean, I think nationally, I don't see the ANC going below 50 nationally. I see the ANC certainly going below 50 in the Gauteng province. I think it's very likely the ANC will go below 50 in KwaZulu-Natal as well. But overall, I do think there will be a slight decline of support nationally. But I don't see the ANC going below 50%.
And markets might be happy with that, right? I mean, there's real concern about what happens, what the scenario is.
What's the post-ANC South Africa?
Yeah,
exactly.
But I mean, I think it's not just a market thing. I think it's a question for many of us, right? I think all of us South Africans should be invested in what the future looks like. I mean, I think the ANC has been part of our political imagination and our political reality for so long, right? And that even as it's now clear that there is a new thinking that something different needs to happen, I do think that for a lot of people there still is that concern and that fear, right, of what a post-ANC South Africa looks like. And I think it's not made easy by the fact that where we have seen examples, and particularly here in the Gauteng province, of what a post-ANC reality looks like, it really has not been very inspiring. We've seen the collapse of all, I mean, I think in Gauteng, we've only had one coalition government being stable, which was the coalition government in Ekurhuleni between 2016 and 2021. That's the only coalition government where we ever had the same executive that got in, completing the rest of the term.
But it's also turned chaotic in the last while.
And it's exactly.
Because even the ANC and EFF couldn't keep it together.
Couldn't keep it together. And so, and you see that in Ekurhuleni now, you see that in the city of Johannesburg, you see that in Tshwane. And so I think, that the experiences that we have had with coalition governments have been a bit, left a number of people a bit quite concerned.
But also nobody's selling it, right? I mean, all that we get is the fear factor that's drummed into all of us, that it's absolutely chaotic, it's disaster, the DA saying that you don't actually want to work with any other party. So people are concerned about coalition, but when in actual fact, it seems the natural progression, that it is something we have to embrace.
And I mean, even you look at countries that have, a very strong culture and have quite a strong history of coalition governments, and you look at countries like Germany, you look at countries like, and particularly countries in the Nordic countries and countries in the European Union, it took them quite a long time to solidify their, the coalition politics. And you still do have, even to this day, some challenges that arise. I mean, in the Netherlands recently, they couldn't even form a government. And I mean, in Europe, you are given months in order for you to form a government after an election, sometimes as much as 6 months to form a government. And sometimes it just doesn't happen, even after all that. So I think coalitions by their nature are very difficult arrangements. And I don't think that because they are difficult in South Africa and, they're quite fairly new, right? And our democracy is quite very young. I don't think we really should give up on the idea of the possibility of coalitions working. Because I do think that under the right conditions and with the right ingredients in the mix, coalitions can work.
And one of the things that's been said, especially by the bigger parties, is that we focus on failings in the coalitions in Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane. But hold on a minute. In fact, what you're looking at now is the arrival of the EFF leader, Julius Malema, at the Peter Mokaba Stadium. You see there, the program then officially about to begin. It appears Julius Malema and Ramaphosa, leader of the ANC, were waiting to see who will speak first and whether they'll actually address what the other has to say. But there he is, flanked by Floyd Chivambu, his deputy. Some of the other EFF leaders as well there on the green in Limpopo, Peter Mokaba Stadium. Malaka, what I wanted to ask you about was what the party says an unfair criticism, that we talk about what's happening in the metros, but in the smaller municipalities, coalitions work well. But if we follow that trend, that means national, higher stakes would be even more chaotic than metro level, would it not?
Well, I mean, I also do think that it's not a completely honest reflection, right? I mean, if you look at the Free State, that's also one of the provinces where you've had quite a number of coalitions in local municipalities and district municipalities as well. You have seen quite a lot of instability there as well. And perhaps maybe it's not spoken about as much, it's not reflected as much because the metros are, the category A municipalities, and that's where the focus tends to be. But I think generally in the country we have struggled with coalitions, sometimes more than others, right? But I also do think there have been important lessons, and there have been times when coalitions have been, for the good, and it's not been a complete disaster, right? There are lessons that are being learned, and we are yet to see, what the outcome of the recent coalition meeting, or rather the coalition summit that was hosted by Ramaphosa, what the outcome of that is going to be. That was only just about a few months ago, so we don't know what that's going to look like, because we didn't have elections after that. We will be able to only gauge with the upcoming elections, where we are very likely to be seeing coalitions coming, especially from here in Gauteng.
And with the proliferation of more parties, I think, the projection is that only Thailand and Colombia will have more parties than we do. We've got to handle that when it comes to coalitions.
Let's have a listen now to what's coming out of Peter Mokaba Stadium as the leaders arrive. Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu leading the delegation. There they are. Let's have a listen to the roar, perhaps, of that crowd.
Mandla! Mandla! Viva EFF, viva! Viva EFF, viva! Viva EFF, viva! Forward to economic freedom in our lifetime, forward! Forward to economic freedom in our lifetime, forward! Long live the undying spirit of Mama Winnie, long live! Long live the undying spirit of Mama Winnie, long live! Molweni Pulukwan! Ninjani! Thank you very much. We are now about to start. Let's welcome on stage the President and the Commander-in-Chief with the officials and greet the CCT members, CETF members, provincial elections, regional elections, Abagogo Nabomkulu, and most importantly, the ground forces of Limpopo Molweni. Yeah, we are about to start now, and we are going to start by praying. It's Africa Day and Happy Africa Day. We are going to call upon the stage Commissar Rosina Komane to come and sing Nkosi Sikelela. We all stand in attention, and those that are wearing caps must take them off, except if you are wearing a beret. Commissar Komane.
Nkosi sikeleni Afrika, maluphakanyisu bandanayo, izwa imithandazo yethu. Nkosi sikelela thina, lusapho lwayo, woza moya, woza moya, woza moya, oyingane, Nkosi sikelela thina, lusapho lwayo, morena bulu, setjhaba sa heso, o fedise dintwa le matshwenye, o se boloke, o se boloke morena, setjhaba sa heso, setjhaba sa Afrika, o se boloke.
Thank you very much, Commissar Osina. Now we are going to call upon the Father of the Revolution in Holy Spirit, and we are going to now call upon Daterari Hulela to come and pray for us. Immediately after that, we are going to call upon the stage Dr. Dumi to give us a praise song. Daterari Hulela, the stage is yours.
Dumelang, dumelang, ka lebitso la Jesu. Ho motlotlei le mo tshwara marapo, our revolutionist Ntate Malema, ke rata hore ke a leboha hore for this past 11 years, I had the privilege of praying and calling God and seeing the powerful move of God upon this party. Baratua barate hang ki tlo rapela ke ntho ke bitseditsweng ke moruti. Empa ha ke no lebala hore Ntate Malema, we are proud of what God is doing in South Africa through you, my president. I have been calling you CIC, but today I say my president. And you must not forget that when I say it as a man of God. I felt this one I cannot miss because I need to tell you how we as the church, we as the elderly people are so proud that God has raised a man in our country. To see God raising our leader at this particular time in South Africa when there is a great need. And I want everybody to know that in all our prayers, we are praying for this great leader. And he's not only loved in this country, he's loved all over the countries. In this wonderful day that we have a rally, I want to read a verse and pray over it. It is found in the book of 1 Chronicles chapter 12 verse 2. And it reads as follows: the sons of Issachar, who had understanding of times to know what Israel ought to do. I stop there. My prayer today is that God raise in our country the sons of Issachar who had an understanding, the understanding of times, the understanding of times and the movement of God. And today I want to say in my prayer, I see God's hand raising sons of Issachar who can read that God's Spirit is upon this movement in Africa today. And I want to say to all Bamameting, understanding and knowledge. When I start coming to the meetings of EFF, they were saying, when I understand the times and the seasons of God that is upon this generation that I'm standing in front. And I want to say that what you see is generation that God is raising for the end time. And this is not far from what God is doing in the church. You are raised by God. You are raised by God to be here today. In my prayer, I'm going to pray for you. The Bible says where I've written, they know the time, understanding the time, knowledge of the time, to know what Israel ought to do. I want you to understand these words that I'm praying upon. What you ought to do. Now I say to you today, you know what you ought to do next week. You know what you ought to do. You know what you ought to do next week. You know what you ought to do. God will guide you. You know what to do. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Father God, the Father of heaven and earth, we bow before you, Almighty God, the creator of man. Lord, we are the image of the living God. I pray that as we open this meeting, dear Lord God, that the Holy Spirit of God will guide everything that is being done here. I pray that you will cover the leader of this movement. You will cover him with the power of the Holy Spirit in everything, and cover all the people as they will be listening today, a way forward in the name of Jesus. We know what we ought to do in this country for the future of our people, in the name of Jesus. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Sengiyabonga, ngiyaleboha, ke re Modimo a le hlonofatse Xikwembu se nkatekisi. Amen.
Dr. Dumi.
Thabela le kae re gona re a vouta ka la boraro a kere re vouta la mang viva EFF viva viva EFF viva Ethome fast ethomoletse gape.
The program that the EFF rally, the Tsalatuba rally happening in Polokwane, now well underway. Dr. Dumi, a gospel artist, now on stage. We're expecting Julius Malema to speak, hopefully soon. It has been quite a wait, both in Limpopo as well as here in Gauteng, where the ANC is gathering. In the south, that's around Soweto at the FNB Stadium. Show you pictures from there in a moment, because Ramaphosa, the president of the party, arrived a short time ago. Their rally, the Siyangoba rally, a declaration of victory, if you will, also about to begin. We saw pictures earlier of the chaplain general and representatives from the different faiths also participating in the program. So Ramaphosa's speech will be possibly much later, because as these things go, we'll hear from COSATU, we'll hear from the other parties, SACP, the alliance partners. They'll all give their declarations of support. And there it is, the picture from FNB Stadium in the south of Johannesburg. And Malaika, it's important, isn't it, for the ANC to show that it can still pull a crowd 30 years on?
I mean, it's very important, and I think it's important in Gauteng in particular, Temegile. I mean, the ANC is hanging by the skin of its teeth in this province. And I think we certainly can say, and I think internal research from the ANC and polls all do indicate that the ANC is likely to lose Gauteng, more likely than not. And in fact, in the 2019 election, they only won this province by 50.19% of the vote. That's a very, very small margin. And looking at the performance in the local government election since then, the by-election, it is highly, highly unlikely that the ANC will retain the Gauteng province. So I think for the ANC, it really is a boost, firstly to show nationally that they can still feel Soccer City in particular. It is the biggest stadium in South Africa, over 94,000 capacity. That's huge. But I mean, also I think for Gauteng, more than anything else, for the Gauteng province, the ANC is fighting for its life in the Gauteng province, you know, and I think this for the ANC is a very deep, a very important psychological boost. Of course, we do know that a number of people who are being passed from other provinces as well. But I mean, just the ability to still make the statement in the Gauteng province, in Soweto, right, which in the previous election did not do much of a showing for the ANC in terms of votes. They did lose a number of votes there. I think it's important for the ANC.
We were just saying a little earlier on how frustrating this must be for both parties, right? Because we know that, you know, as soon as the president starts speaking, the camera's going to be on him. The EFF loses their clout. They've got Dr. Tumi out now, who's incredibly popular. You know, will Julius be overshadowed by the president? Who's gonna be the last? And you want to be the last person standing as well.
For eyeballs, right?
It is.
Absolutely.
It is. You wonder if you're the governing party that's enjoyed this majority for 30 years, if people today say we actually want to hear from the leader of the third largest party in the country instead of yours, what do we read into that as far as what to expect come Wednesday?
And who's the better showman? And showmanship is incredibly important.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think, you know, it's something very telling, right? When, I mean, I think clearly Julius is a draw card for anything. I mean, I think ask any average South African who they would rather listen to, and a lot of people would rather listen to Julius, right? I think there's a number of factors, one of which is that it generally also does speak to the demographic and the demographics of South Africa itself. South Africa is a youthful country. The African continent is youthful. You know, according to the United Nations, 70% of the population of sub-Saharan Africa comprises of people below the age of 30, and that's a demographic that the EFF is extraordinary. It happens nowhere else in the world.
And it's not really reflective in our politics, is it? If you
look
at the age of our
Interesting
leaders.
you guys say that. Look at this picture. We're showing you the leaders, the top leaders of the ANC.
Shuffling.
All of whom, well, most of whom are past 50, many of them past 60. And one of the conversations that always comes up with the ANC is, can people of that age group be the ones who lead this country to a better future?
I mean, I think it's a question that the EFF really has latched onto with its own politics, right? To say, the draw card for the EFF has always been, we are a young party. You know, it's a time. This is you can't do anything to an idea whose time has come. It's time that the world started to see younger leaders and stuff. And I think it resonates not just with South Africans, but with the African continent as well, which might explain why the EFF is also so popular on the African continent. You actually do even have, you know, the EFF in Namibia, the EFF in Sierra Leone. They were there at the EFF rally about a few months ago. So the EFF resonates.
I think the ANC president, Ramaphosa, is actually going to speak now. Let's listen.
Viva South African Communist Party, viva! Phambili nesanko phambili. Malibongwe. Igama lamakhosikazi. Roar, young lions, roar. Roar, young lions, roar. Forward with the ANC Veterans League, forward. Forward with Umkhonto weSizwe Liberation War veterans, forward. Amandla. National Chairperson, Program Director, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, the officials of the African National Congress, isithwalandwe umama uSophie de Bruyn, former President and former Deputy President of the ANC, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, the leadership of the African National Congress, as in the National Executive Committee, the leadership of the African National Congress in our various provinces who are represented here, Comrade Panyaza Lesufi, the chairperson of the Gauteng province where we are, the leadership of our alliance partners, the SACP, COSATU, and SANCO, and the leadership of the ANC Women's League, the ANC Youth League, the ANC Veterans League, the ANC Umkhonto Wesizwe Liberation War Veterans. Religious leaders who are here present, and our traditional leaders who are also here, comrades and friends, and the people of South Africa. Dumelang, Sanbonani, Abshin, Dimasiari, Lochani, Molweni nonke. Comrades and friends, we gather here today in our thousands, the only political party in the whole of South Africa that can bring so many people together in one place, showing the real power of the African National Congress. We gather here carrying with us the hopes and aspirations of millions of our people across the length and the breadth of South Africa, to declare that together we will do more and we will do better. We come together in the spirit of peace, of love, of humility, on the eve of one of the most important elections in our country's history. Thina singabantu boxolo, singabantu abothando, abanothando, asinanzondo. We gather in our numbers to demonstrate the strength of the ANC's commitment to continue to serve the people of South Africa. On Wednesday, the 29th, our people will decide whether our country continues moving forward with the ANC towards a better, brighter future, or backwards to a terrible past. As we gather here in Soweto, we draw inspiration from the lives and struggles, the creativity and determination of so many extraordinary leaders who lived in this city. We think of James Sofasonke Mpanza, Ubaba Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, Umama Uwinnie Madikizela Mandela, uLillian Ngoyi, uAndrew noMama June Mlangeni, Desmond and Leah Tutu, Archbishop, Walter and Albertina Sisulu, Joe Slovo, Amina Kachalia, Helen Joseph, Ahmed Kathrada, Ellen Kuzwayo, Lalu Chiba, and many others. We also think of many legends in various areas of our lives as South Africans, legends in sports such as Kaizer Motaung, Ivan Koza, Lucas Hadebe, Dr. Kumalo, Gerard Sikoto, the artist, Abigail Kubega, Sipo Hotsticks Mabuse, I saw him in the crowd, Maralo, Lillian Dube. We also think of business giants like Date Richard Lynn May, Marina Maponya, and indeed many others. We also think of Hector Peterson and the brave and militant generation of 1976. At the beginning of the year, we called on every ANC leader, member and supporter to go to every farm, every village and township, to go to every city and suburb, to account to the people of South Africa so that we could listen to their views and concerns and to spread our message of hope and renewal. We said we would work for a decisive mandate to continue the transformation of our country, to create work and opportunity, to end poverty and hunger, and to ensure that all South Africans can live in peace and safety. Over the course of this campaign, we went through the length and the breadth of the country, and we listened. Re phile nako ya gore re mamele batho ba heso. Siye sa mamela abantu bakuthi. Iba yingiselile bantu ba ka hina. Itwa kahle ku ri ba vulavula yini na. Ro dipa chifhinga cha u thetshelesa vhathu kha Africa Tshipembe tshoṱhe. And over the course of this campaign, the ANC activists and volunteers, yes, did touch a number of people, and we can say that we heard, and we heard very clearly. I do want to take this opportunity to thank ANC leaders at all levels, provincial, national, and regional and branch level, for having engaged in this campaign. I also want to thank our former leaders, such as President Thabo Mbeki, President Kgalema Motlanthe, Baleka Mbete, David Mabuza, Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, Tokyo Sikghwale, Matthew Sposa, and many others who joined in the campaign to ensure an ANC victory. We're the only ones who have a galaxy of leaders. Labo abanye abanazo inkokheli abangakhuluma ngazo. The African National Congress kuphela. Siyaziqhenya sinazo inkokheli ezike zasebenzela isizwe. I also thank the leaders and members of the ANC Women's League for leading the campaign. Oh, Mama in black and green, I want to thank you for leading this campaign of the African National Congress. I also want to thank the ANC Youth League, the youth league that has come alive, that has energized our campaign. Ke a leboga. I equally want to thank the ANC Veterans League and the MK Liberation War veterans le MK yempela, hayi le yomkokotelo. I also thank the leaders of our alliance partners. COSATU pulled out all stops and brought out the workers, their shop stewards, to go through the length of the breadth of the country campaigning. Ababomvu, Nabo, the SACP came out in their numbers, as well as Abahlali. I also want to thank our traditional leaders for opening up spaces for the African National Congress to come and campaign in your areas. Rialibua, Akensa Shinene, Boripa Chipinga, Cha Uri Jena Bukati, Hapetu Neba Busa Ono Riambe, Nabatu Bahash. But most of all, I want to thank our dedicated, committed, and courageous volunteers. Many of you who are here today, we want to thank you. About 500,000 of you across the length and the breadth of the country. You campaigned hard, and you are going to make sure that the ANC emerges victorious, and all the glory will go to you as the volunteers of the African National Congress. Phambili ngama volunteer, phambili. Forward with our volunteers, forward. Comrades and friends, we have listened and understood the desire of our people for a better future for themselves, their families, and their communities. We have seen massive outpouring of support for the ANC across the country. Our people everywhere have reminded us of how we have walked this journey together in the last 30 years to build South Africa. Wherever we have gone, the support of the ANC has been visible. It has been palpable. Supporting how we bona ukaruka itspara kama zoho, batho kaofela ba bontsha gore ba rata mokgatlo wa bona. ANC ba rata kapo ba rate. ANC ya ratiwa mo South Africa. And it is for that reason that the ANC is going to emerge victorious. As we went around the country, our people told us over and over that our country has come a long way. We have made incredible progress and achieved much together. They also told us that our journey towards creating the South Africa we all want and deserve is still work in progress. As we continue our journey, as we prepare to carry out our people's mandate, the ANC will focus on 6 priorities, just 6 issues to take our country forward. Over the next 5 years, working with all South Africans, we will implement a jobs plan to put more South Africans to work. We will build our industries and invest in an inclusive economy. We will tackle the high cost of living. We will invest in our people and provide services that our people need. We will continue to defend our democracy and advance the freedom that we fought so hard. We will continue to build a better Africa and a better world for all our children to grow up in. We have a plan to get more South Africans to work. Throughout this campaign, in the homes of our people, in the workplaces where our people work, in the streets of our towns and our townships and villages, we have met mothers and fathers, grandparents and young people. So many of them told us of their struggles to find work and to provide for their families so that they can live in dignity and pride. Many told us how grateful they were for the social grants that support their children so that they can put bread on their tables. But they also spoke to us about their yearning to work, to contribute to building their families and communities. It was particularly clear to us that young people are struggling to find employment. I was extremely touched by the determination of young people to carry on even after being disappointed time and again with regard to finding work. Our jobs plan aims to address these needs. For young people and for many unemployed people in our country, sithe sizawuyakha imisebenzi, sizawuvula amathuba ukuthi abantu bonke abasha nabadala bayithola imisebenzi. Ari bua ka mesebetsi, ari bui ka ba batjha fela ba nang le 18 to 35. Re bua le bao ba nang le 35 go ya hodimo gore le bona ba fumane mesebetsi. We are going to implement our jobs plan and building on the great progress. Imisebenzi esike sayakha i-public employment eye EPWP neminye ye-presidential employment stimulus. Sizimisele ukuthi siyakhe imisebenzi ukuthi sifake abantu bakithi emisebenzini ehlukene. Sithi masibafake kuleyo misebenzi bakwazi ukufunda ama-skills, bakwazi ukuba nendlela abazokwazi ukuthi babe nolwazi oluphelele, ukuthi uma bethola imisebenzi bakwazi ukuthi yebo babe nalo lelo thuba lokondla imindeni yabo. We are going to set up, and we have already started, here in Gauteng. We call it Nasi Span. It's a massive project that is bringing a number of people into job situations. The same is happening in other provinces. And on top of that, we are also going to spend quite a lot of money, billions, training people to get skills that can be best used in our economy, because our objective is to create quality jobs. And in order to do so, we want to build industries. We want to localize so that more and more products are made here in South Africa, rather than to continue to import products that can easily be made in our factories. We will support and protect those industries that employ many of our people by creating a conducive environment for businesses to invest. And these will include industries like in mining, in agriculture, in tourism, in infrastructure, in clothing, food and beverages, and steel. We will also support new industries like in electric vehicles. South Africa is one of those countries that has built an auto industry where we make cars, quality cars that are exported to the rest of the world. We are now going to get into the new industry of making electric cars. We are going to open up more and more industries and opportunities in renewable energy. In renewable energy, we've already seen the investments that go above 170 billion, with most of it in the largest province in our country, Northern Cape, where many investments have been made. Yes, we will also focus on the digital economy, information and technology. We will also undertake a balanced, just transition to a cleaner, greener future that will lead to the creation of new jobs and make our exports more competitive. As we have gone around the country, re mamela batho ba heso ba bang ba re jwetsa hore re se ke ra tlhola re tswella pele fela ka go exporta raw materials like the minerals. We should beneficiate them here in South Africa. Re age di factory mo di minerals tsa rona di tla manufacturiwang mona, re be re ntse re exporte finished products. Go na le gore we must export rocks, soil and dust, and later bring in the finished products that will have been made elsewhere, where with our minerals other people will have created jobs. The ANC Youth League has been the leading voice in this, and we have heeded, we are going to continue heeded their message to make sure that we beneficiate more and more of our own products here locally. As part of the work that we must do to make our economy more inclusive and more dynamic, we will continue with our Black Industrialist Program. We started a Black Industrialist Program where we've been supporting Black industrialists to build factories, to build manufacturing establishments, so that Black people can also participate in a meaningful way in the economy of our country. Throughout the country, we met community members, business people and industrialists who stressed how important it is for our economic recovery that we should repair our railways and also end load shedding. We will complete the work that has the excellent work that has already been done, yes, to tackle our electricity crisis, to bring down levels of load shedding, and finally ku ri hi heta load shedding i nga ha vi kona la South Africa hi hanya ku nga ri na load shedding. Nkarhi walowo ta fika hi khensa ntirho lowu endliwako ku ri hi heta load shedding. Se hi vonile ku ri Eskom i lunghisa ti-power stations ta hina, and we have already seen how program of maintenance has been carrying on to make sure that our power stations work more effectively. We have opened the doors to much more investment in electricity generation, particularly in solar and wind. Building on the progress already made, we will continue to work with business, with labor, and other social partners to make our ports more efficient and our rail lines more reliable. We want, yes, our ports to work effectively. We want Durban Port, which is the real artery of our economic future, to be one of the best ports in the country. Yes, indeed, all the other ports that we have. We want our rail lines to be rebuilt and to be reliable. We want PRASA to make sure that our trains come back so that our people can travel on trains as they go to work. We will continue to transform the structure of our financial sector so that the financial sector, the banks, provide affordable credit and invest in industrialization, in infrastructure, in job creation, and facilitates financial inclusion and prioritizes domestic investment. On the campaign trail, we met hundreds of South Africans who have started their own businesses. Many of our black people now have their own businesses, and many more want to get into business. They do so that they can feed their families and lead productive lives. But many of them told us of their dreams to invest and grow their businesses. They spoke about the battles that they face to get affordable loans from the banks so that they can buy machinery, expand their businesses, and have their own transport machinery to produce their products. Abantu abaningi bathola ubunzima uma beya kumabhanki bayofuna imali. Amabhanki awabaniki imali. Sifuna ukuthi kube nendlela eqonde kahle ukuthi the financial institutions bakwazi ukuboleka abantu imali, bakwazi ukukhuphula le economy yethu, ngoba ukuthi economy yethu ikhuphuke idinga imali. We call upon our banks, yes, to offer our business people loans, to not make it difficult for our people to get the financial assistance that they need to run their own businesses. Others complained of the difficulty they have in finding markets and places where they can sell their goods and services. And to help these, we will encourage empowerment, employment, entrepreneurship, and training through set-asides for the public and private sectors. We will increase support for small enterprises entrepreneurs and cooperatives, especially in townships, through our public procurement programs. As I went through our townships and villages, I could see that many of our people are real entrepreneurs, and all they need is the support from their government to enable their businesses to function properly. And we are committed that we will support as many of our business people as possible so that they can make progress in their own businesses. We will support businesses that are owned by women, by young people, and by people with disabilities. As we work to make our economy more inclusive, it is deeply disturbing that some parties want to scrap broad-based black economic empowerment. In some particular province, I heard many African, colored, and Indian business people saying that they are effectively shut out of access to contracts to provide public and private service. There are those who say BEE must be scrapped. I want to make it clear, the African National Congress will not scrap black economic empowerment. We will not scrap it. Black economic empowerment is the policy of the African National Congress, and we will continue with it. And we will not scrap employment equity. We will continue. Bayathanda noma bathandi, employment equity izawuqhubeka. Re tla tswella pele le yona. This is to ensure that black people, women and persons with disabilities are represented in all parts of the economy, in all industries, in all professions, and in all institutions. We will continue to work with our Liberation War veterans to better their lives and to enable them to defend the gains of the democracy that they fought for. In many rural communities we visited, we met men and women who want to farm and who asked the ANC to help them to get land. In many rural and peri-urban communities, we met farmers who have been given land, who now want to grow and to enter new markets, who want more and more land. New landowners who have received land through the restitution program have used their land to build livelihoods for their children and communities, and have encouraged us to do more to make sure that they do succeed. And we will continue with our land reform program. We will continue to give land to our people so that they can farm. In the next 5 years, we will accelerate land reform and redistribution so that we can give small farmers assistance in the form of seed, tractors, irrigation, fencing, and we will protect security of tenure to boost food security and agricultural production and to build sustainable livelihoods. Access to water remains a major problem in many rural areas that we visited. And of course, in many of our towns and cities as well. Our government will continue to expand and speed up major projects to ensure that more rural areas have reliable water supply. And this work is already underway. It includes the rehabilitation of a number of dams in a number of our provinces. And here in Gauteng, yes, we have a water problem. And as I walked in, I saw one of the placards being held by one of our comrades here. They raised the issue of water in Hammanskraal. We are attending to the completion of the Rooiwal wastewater treatment so that our people in Hammanskraal, in Tshwane, should be able to get better water. And these are programs that we are attending to throughout the country. In eThekwini, we have the same challenge. In Limpopo, we have the same challenge. In Northwest, there's a similar challenge. We are addressing the water challenge that our people are having. While we have worked together over the last 30 years to lift millions of people out of absolute poverty, the rising cost of food and transport is taking a great toll on many households. Yes, we now know that when our people go to supermarkets, even as they have some money, when our pensioners go with their 2,000 rand, abasa khona go reka dijo ka tsela ele ya khale ha ba khutla le dijo tse dinyanenyana fela. Ra tseba ntho eno, re batla gore le yona e lokiswe, that the cost of living must also be brought down. That is why we are taking steps to make everyday life more affordable for our people, the unemployed, and the middle class. We are addressing needs like food, housing, healthcare, and wages. We will prioritize food security, including VAT exemption on essential items, support communities and home gardens, and take action against price fixing. We will expand subsidized basic services like electricity, water, and houses for the poor through the indigent program in our municipalities. The ANC will staunchly defend the national minimum wage to ensure that it continues to increase in line with inflation, and to work to ensure that all employers comply with it. In these times of hardship, it is outrageous that some parties are saying that habakawina uma bengawina ukhetho loluzayo i-national minimum wage bazoyiqeda ingasabikho. They say they are going to scrap the national minimum wage. This is an attack on workers and on our efforts to build a fairer society. These are the same reactionary forces that see nothing wrong in paying slave wages to illegal migrants who come to our country while depriving law-abiding workers of their right to a living wage. We have seen how they employ people who do not have the relevant papers, but worst of all, they pay them slave wages because they want to exploit them. As we grow the economy and create jobs, we will continue to provide support and protection to the most vulnerable in society. We will maintain the existing social grants, which have been so important in reducing poverty and providing children with opportunities. At the same time, we will progressively implement a basic income support grant for unemployed people based on the SRD grant. We will, with so many people still unemployed, we must continue to provide income support to those who need it most. As I have gone around the country, our people have said, President, we are grateful that during COVID, the government introduced the 350, and they say to me, we want you to increase it. We want you to take it to 750. That is what people want. Now we say, we want our economy to grow. As our economy grows, we will be able to have the capacity to provide more and more support and assistance to our people. However, we have now increased the 350 to 370. Sithi, yebo sinizwile, kodwa sithi sizaqhubeka sibone ukuthi le basic income grant efunwa umphakathi ana sizo-introducer kanjani uma siloku siya phambili. Yona i-basic income grant iyeza isendleleni izoba khona la eSouth Africa. Basic income grant itlaba teng ka hobane thusa batho ba haeso, e tla ba thusa ka hobane tlhophego e sa le teng mona. We will continue investing in South Africa's people by improving access to quality education and health, expanding on the use of science and technology, and ensuring that our people have decent housing and basic services. Ntho e nngwe e batho ba rona ba bangata ba sa e tsebeng ke ya hore ka mesebetsi e etswang ke mmuso ona wa rona, batho ba bangata mo South Africa setse ba phela dilemo tse ileng hodimo ho feta pele. Pele batho ba bangata ba ne ba hlokahala dilemo tsa bona di soka di fihla le ho 60 le ho 63. Jwale batho ba bangata ba mona South Africa se ba phela dilemo tse di setse di fitetse ka hodimo. Hona ho etsahala ka hobane ntho ena ya bophelo, healthcare ya mona South Africa ka nnete setse nyolohile. Bophelo, healthcare ya rona setse nyolohile, and yes, our life expectancy has been rising quite a lot, and the World Health Organization says when a country sees an improvement in life expectancy, it means that yes, the health and the livelihoods of the people in the country is progressively acceptable that some privileged members of our society want us to continue with a deeply uneven healthcare system that has apartheid features, that deprives the poor and the vulnerable of the right to equal access to quality health care. It is equally wrong for them to claim that the NHI will mean the end of private health care. The NHI will harness the strength of both the private and public sectors to build a single quality healthcare system for all. We will give every child the best start in life by introducing 2 years of compulsory early childhood development and ensure proper resourcing and support to ECD facilities. Re batla hore bana ba rona go be le dilemo tse pedi tsa compulsory ECD, di-crash tsena, bana ba rona ba kene di-crash, ba kene ECD, ba rutwe hantle. We want to call on our telecommunications companies, our telcos, to reduce continuously the cost of data. The cost of data in South Africa is still amongst the highest in the world, and we want data to continue to be reduced because South Africa cannot be an outlier when it comes to the cost of data. Lona, the telco companies, we want to see you continuing to reduce the cost of data so that our young people must be able, yes, to be on the internet, to be able to find opportunities for employment without having to pay a lot of money. That's why we said, down with data costs down. We want those data costs to go down to ensure that all South Africans have decent shelter. We will increase the availability of housing. Yes, we will continue building RDP houses for our people. We will also increase service sites so that those of our people who want to build their own houses should be able to get service sites with water, with electricity, and roads. At the same time, we will want to continue upgrading our informal settlements and provide them with basic services. Throughout the country, we visited areas where residents expressed deep disappointment about the working and the performance of our municipalities. Bathu banji boribuza uri bomasipala abakho shuma zwavhuḓi vha khou ṱoḓa bomasipala vhashu vha tshi ita mushumo wavhuḓi wa service delivery. We are going to focus on improving our municipalities, our local government. We want our local government to be more accountable. We want to see those who are in our local government to be dedicated to serving our people, to put the interests of our people first. Re se ke ra ba le batho ba tla bang ba sebeletsa dipokoto tsa bona, ba ska ba ba sebeletsa fela bona, ba ska ba ba bitsa metswalle ya bona le ditsala tsa bona go tlo nka mesebetsi, ba bule mesebetsi gore e etswe ka batho botlhe go sena go kgetha bao ba le metswalle ya bona. We had complaints about water and sewage not being properly maintained. I saw illegal dumping and heard about refuse not being collected. The residents of various places we met spoke about broken meter boxes, about cable theft that deprived them of electricity. Many complained about high municipality bills, uneven implementation of the indigent subsidy system. That is why, where municipalities are unable to deliver basic services like clean water, national and provincial governments will be able to step in to ensure that people get what they need. Uma omasipala bethu kubonakala ukuthi bayahluleka ukwenza imisebenzi yabo, national government no provincial government uzawungena ulungise uyenze imisebenzi ukuthi abantu bakithi bangahlali bephila bengenawo ama-services. Ngifuna ukuthi kucace kahle lokho komasipala ukuthi we are going to intervene because we will not allow our people to continue suffering as a result of municipalities that are not going to perform. This we are going to do. In fact, we have already started. I was very touched last week when I met a pensioner who told me that she has not forgotten what it was like to live under apartheid. And she told me of her bitter memories of being a second-class citizen. She urged us to make sure that vulnerable people never again experience discrimination and prejudice. Over the next 5 years, the ANC will continue to promote and defend the rights of all South Africans against racism, sexism, gender-based violence, homophobia, discrimination, and intolerance. We will remain resolute in advancing the rights and dignity of children, older persons, persons with disabilities, the LGBTQIA+ community, and people living with albinism. We will continue the fight for women's emancipation and so that we can achieve a truly non-sexist society. We will strengthen the role of families in supporting both young and older citizens with special attention to their responsibilities in raising their children. We will strengthen the quality of services that are provided to older people including community-based and residential care facilities, and we will afford them the consideration and the respect that is due to them by society. During the course of this campaign, we met many communities and individuals who expressed painful experiences about crime and the toll that it is taking on their lives and the well-being of our society. The pandemic of gender-based violence continues despite the important work that has been done by the police, the prosecuting authorities, civil society, gender activists, and some men who continue to advocate the respect for women. Yesterday, I signed into law the act that facilitates the establishment of the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. This statutory body will coordinate and provide strategic leadership to fight against gender-based violence. The National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence was developed together with society. Now, we will continue to use this law to ensure that we protect the women of our country better, and we impose harsher sentences on perpetrators of gender-based violence, on those men who rape the women of our country, and those men who kill the women of our country, and those men who abuse the women of our country. We say, yes, through these laws, you are going to find it harder to get bail. You are going to get life sentences when you abuse the women of our country. And for that reason, we say to the men of South Africa, respect the women and girls of our country.
We've been listening to the president there talking about the bills that he's recently signed into law, the gender-based violence, the corruption. He was also talking a little bit earlier on about the NHI, which we expected that he would do. I mean, that floored a lot of people that he pushed it through so quickly. Some thought that it was ill-advised. Is that populist politics? He spent a lot of time in his speech talking about reaching out to people. You were talking a little bit earlier, Malaika, about how he sounded almost surprised that maybe he hadn't been on the election trail enough, finding out from people what it is that they want. As we expected, he's talking about what the ANC has succeeded under his leadership in the last 30 years, how they're going to get the wheels of the economy up and running again, how to get the Durban port up and running again, how to get the wheels of the trains up and running again, how they're going to be creating more than 2 million jobs. We know that he was probably referring to Nasi Spani, the youth employment, and that's quite a controversial venture into dealing with the high levels of youth unemployment that we have in this country. He spent quite a bit of time on load shedding, as we expected. We hope that this is not something that's going to set up to be a big failure afterwards, because as we know, for the last month there's been extraordinary no load shedding. Suddenly all of this, the collection of catastrophes have suddenly evaporated. So let's hope that that doesn't change afterwards. That it lasts beyond May 29th. Talking about jobs and the sort of the billions that are going to be spent on training. They're going to transform the economy. They're going to end poverty and hunger. And, you know, as we expected, big promises coming out of a man that, I mean, this is an important election for him, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I mean, it's an important election for him, but for the African National Congress as well. And I mean, I think, you know, as I'm listening to President Ramaphosa speaking, I can't help but think that over the past 5 years, there has been an erosion of the capacity of the state, and a lot of the things that he's saying needs to be done by the state. And when I talk about the erosion of the capacity of the state, I mean, one of the things that Ramaphosa has done, and we'll remember this about his leadership over many years to come, is that Ramaphosa has effectively weakened the state in some ways, right? And
Absolutely.
one of the ways in which this has been done, Tembekile, is that he has got what we call institutional fundamentalism. So when something doesn't work, if a department is not doing what it's supposed to do, he creates an alternative institution, right?
So instead of fixing, he starts something new.
He creates alternative institutions. And I worry, I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm just very worried about all these grand promises, right? And I mean, it's not bad grand promises, but I mean, these promises need to happen with a state that has got capacity. And
That's right.
like I'm saying, one of the things that for me, at least even for me personally, what I'll remember the Ramaphosa years for, is the erosion of the state. Literally every department that is supposed to be doing work, whether you're talking about economic development, you're talking about, you know, trade and industry, it has got an alternative advisory board, an advisory panel, an envoy, a committee, and all of that.
To talk about a committee.
To talk about the committee. So that institutional fundamentalism makes it very difficult to imagine that a lot of the things that he's promising can be done, because those things require a capable state. And when a state is eroded, I don't see how that will work.
And that calls into question the NHI and the timing of it. And now, I mean, how long has he been talking about GBV and setting up another task team to deal with that and another task team? And then suddenly, a couple of days before it gets signed into law.
I want us to pick up on that, but I think we're watching two rallies, by the way, today. The EFF, I think, has just got underway, but we'll go back. No, actually, that's not actually at the point where we're going to bring it to you when Julius Malema speaks, the leader of the EFF. But to what Jane was saying, you set up so many parallel structures that the other complication that I find with that is accountability, right? Because then you bring in Malaika doesn't do well, then you bring in Jane, but Malaika's still around, and I come in. But then at the end of the chain, who do we look to for answers?
But more than that, I mean, there's also a contradiction, right? Because on the one hand, one of the things that has always been a ticket with Ramaphosa, even coming into the presidency, was that, you know, we are going to, you know, make the state leaner, right? Even and particularly the executive leaner, right? You want it to be leaner. You want to, you know, reduce the number of people.
We also want it to be leaner.
And yet you create parallel institutions all the
Leaner,
time, right? Leaner and more efficient, right? And so now you've got a huge, you know, so you almost have, you've created this almost a private sector of the state of some sort, right? A state that exists with almost something similar to like a private sector on the side. Because even a lot of the people who are then brought in to run these institutions, these panels, these advisory boards, these committees, are largely from the private sector. So you actually have got a private sector that is running the state.
And also the appeasement policies. I mean, if you look at energy and then you bring in the electricity minister and then you've got to appease Gwede Mantashe. So now we're hearing that so much of the energy is being actually transformed to Gwede Mantashe, so he'll end up ruling it anyway. You know, so
I think President Ramaphosa has been playing very dangerous politics with the state. I really think he has. And I think it's one of the things that I think we don't reflect on very seriously, right? What it means when the state capacity is eroded like that. What it means when you've got the Department of Trade and Industry that is supposed to attract investment, and then you create an envoy to go out there and attract investment. Because when this envoy goes out of the country to go and attract investment, we are paying for these people to do this. What then becomes the job of the people in the Department of Trade and Industry, right? And so you've got this state that is basically people that are just not having work to do. And all of the people who are in these panels, in these advisory boards, in these committees and all of that are reporting to the presidency. So it's almost like all this power has now been concentrated into the office of the president. And that's something that must worry us, especially about what the future of our democracy looks like if the presidency itself can have that much say and that much power and oversight over so much of these.
I mean, when he's talking about promising jobs, that's not the kind of jobs that we want to hear, right?
Of course not. Of course
we want
not.
the ground.
And I mean, and there was no way that he was not going to speak about job creation, because that is one of the biggest issues that we find. Like it's
over
a
7
huge
million
issue.
people in this country unemployed.
I mean, it's unthinkable, right? And I don't think, I don't think any party that takes itself seriously is going to want to go into an election without having a job creation strategy. But the reality of the situation is that a feasible one. But the reality of the situation, typically, is that we've been hearing this talk about the creation of 2 million jobs for the last 15 years.
And the language has evolved around jobs, right? Because government has finally come to the realization. In fact, Julius Malema is actually speaking. I think we can take him now. Let's have a listen.
Expensive to keep black people out of the places which they never allowed black people before. Today, you claim to be free. How can you be free when we are going through hunger? What is this that you are saying about being free when more than 40% of young people of South Africa are unemployed? Today, many of our people do not have land. Many of our people do not have homes. Racism is still the order of the day. The exploitation by a capitalist system against the African majority is still the order of the day. We take this opportunity to commend and appreciate the marvelous and impactful work that was done by our ground forces from Musina to Cape Town. You went to send this message to all our people that is not yet Uhuru. We still have to fight for another day. Comrades, we are here as the EFF to report here without any fear of contradiction that EFF is present and alive in all corners of South Africa. Fighters, I'm the only one who can tell you that because I've been to all corners of South Africa. In the last 3 months, I visited our people everywhere where they are found in South Africa. And today, as we conclude our campaign, I want to say to you, I am very happy that the EFF can be found in all corners, including the Dorpies of Northern Cape. Comrades, we want to say that our people must come out in their numbers on the 29th of May. If the youth of South Africa come out on the 29th of May, we will collapse the government of criminals. Fighters and ground forces, don't be discouraged. You have fought a good fight against all forms of disinformation and lies told about your movement and your leaders. You never got discouraged. You continued to fight. Even when the media was not on our side, you did not listen to a white-owned capitalist media. You did door to door to spread the message of the EFF. Comrades, you have thus far demonstrated that you can be relied upon. Let us all increase the momentum because we are approaching the finishing line. Today is not the end of our campaign. Today we are here to recharge and go back to our villages to conclude the finishing line as the leader of society. President of the Youth and Student Mobilization, we are very proud of the work you are doing. The Mulungis Madonsela Battalion is shaking the whole of South Africa. The youth of South Africa is once again more interested in the coming elections. These elections belong to you, the youth of South Africa, and the youth of South Africa will determine the outcome of these elections. No young person in the whole of South Africa should associate with a failed liberation movement. If you are young and following the dying liberation movement, it is your own problem, because that movement only belongs to people who have attempted suicide in their lives. If you have never attempted suicide, don't go to the ANC because you'll attempt suicide. The problems of the ANC are so many to a point that all young people who are associated with the ANC are suffering a permanent depression. Fighters, we have gone to this election under the clarion call. Our land and jobs now, stop load shedding. we launched this campaign in KwaZulu-Natal. We went to the homes, we went to student residences, we went to workplaces, religious institutions, village crawls to speak to our people about the call for true freedom. But let me remind you that this was our message, but it was spoken by many voices, but the message remained one. None of our leaders deviated from the message. None of our leaders wanted to outshine other leaders. None of our leaders did their own program outside the program guided by this message. We were always guided by a principle that says many voices, one message. And we successfully executed that. We have heard and understood the people of KwaZulu-Natal that many areas in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, particularly Umkhanyakude, Umzinyati, Ugu, Zululand, and many other areas do not have access to clean and drinkable water. Vanhu vale Giyani na Malomlela. Hina banhlangano wa EFF hita tisamati and hita khoma swigevenga leswi nga tsandzeka ku tisa mati for more than 20 years. A Giyani hita aka university yentshwa hita tirhisa Giyani College of Education ku aka university ya Manyunyu a Giyani. We heard the people of Phoenix in eThekwini that for more than 30 years they have been excluded from housing allocation, and instead of building unity, political parties that have been dominant continue to divide them. We have listened to the young people of Mpumalanga, in Bushbuck Ridge, in Komazi, Emalahleni, Dr. J.S. Moroka municipality, that they need the land and jobs and they want them now. We've heard the people of Mafike, Bujanala, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda and Dr. Ruth Mumpati district that their levels of suffering due to poverty and joblessness must come to an end. We paid attention to the young people of Gauteng in the township and in all institutions of learning that they want free, quality and decolonized education, and they want it now. The youth of South Africa have said, when you take over, you must immediately declare free education and declare free Wi-Fi in all institutions of learning. The youth of South Africa have said the allowances that are paid to the students must come directly into their pockets every month. The youth of South Africa have said they don't want NSFAS, they want us to pay directly to the university because NSFAS is the corruption of Blade Nzimande and the Communist Party. Fighters, we heard the people of Orange Farm, of Alexandra, of Deep Sword, when they said that despite the 30 years of the so-called freedom, they still do not have decent shelter and houses. We've heard the people of the Northern Cape in all the regions that they want the mineral resources and mineral wealth that is underneath their soil to benefit the people of Northern Cape. The people of the Western Cape have said to us the open fact that the white government of DA does not care about the colored and black communities in the Western Cape. They said we must not only remove the corrupt ANC, we must also remove the racist DA which is exploiting and oppressing our people in the Western Cape. Comrades, the people of the Eastern Cape live under very difficult conditions, with unemployment being the highest in the whole of South Africa. There are still mud schools with pit toilets in this Eastern Cape. We have had the people of Ndlambe, Makana, Nelson Mandela Bay, Buffalo City, Mthatha, Butterworth, Flagstaff, Lusikisiki, that they want to live in a country without crime and unemployment. The people of Eastern Cape said to us, please hire more police to come and look after our communities, because there is also a problem of stock theft. People of South Africa have said to us, when you take over, please remove the corrupt police who are distributing drugs using the vans of the police. You must take them to jail for no less than 25 years. The people of South Africa have said, we must take criminals toe for toe, because the murder rate in South Africa is too high. The people of South Africa have said, if a person takes out a gun and point that gun at a policeman, that person must say goodbye at home, because that day he's going to meet his maker. Comrades, we have been asked by the people of Soshanguve to come and rescue Jukule. There is a place in Soshanguve called Jukule where even police are not allowed. We are promising that on the day we get inaugurated here in South Africa, we will run a huge military operation in Jukule and all areas that are affected by drugs, nyaupe, and gangsterism. Comrades, no one must tell lies. There is no province that is run correctly. You can't say Western Cape is run correctly. You can't say any province of the ANC is run correctly. Eastern Cape is even worse. Their premier went to steal a degree from Fort Hare. He went to steal a master's. Now they are tired of stealing money. They are stealing qualifications. So we need to stop those criminals in the Eastern Cape. Comrades, we must make sure that we proclaim here that we are ready to lead the government of South Africa from now onwards. We are ready to fight all kinds of criminals in our country, including the corruption of the politicians. No politician will be left unattended. Comrades, when we take over South Africa, we are going to open Palapala, and we are going to raid Palapala because we suspect there are more dollars left at Palapala. We said to you, the president has dollars under mattress and in the sofas. You said you are lying. The president said himself 4 days ago, I'm going to pay back those dollars to the buyer. EFF emo expose hore ntweke le khodu e robala hodima di dollar ija idutse hodima di dollar. Comrades, I declare in front of all of you here and in front of all the progressive forces of South Africa, Africa and the world, that I will do everything in my power to bring about economic freedom and common prosperity in our lifetime. I commit that when I'm president and head of state of South Africa, I will not be involved in any form of wrongdoing and corruption. I will protect our natural resources and I will grow our economy to create millions of jobs for all our people. I'm not a sellout. I don't have a history of selling out. I've never sold any of my friends or comrades or any of my fellow fighters out. I've always demonstrated loyalty to those who served with me in the trenches. I commit to be loyal to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and make sure that the Constitution does not serve only those who are associated with white monopoly capital. Comrades, I come to you with a formidable and reliable team of revolutionaries and professionals who are committed to change. I bring to you the Deputy President of the EFF, who is ready to become the Minister of Finance in South Africa and take care of our people. Comrades, I bring to you the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Marshal Dlamini, who's ready to take that province and make sure that we lead it with precision. I want to commit here that we will not hire people in the people's government who are politically affiliated only to the EFF. Whether you are ANC, whether you are DA, whether you are EFF, you must still have the South African ID and have the qualifications. Only then you will be employed in a position where you are suitable. Comrades, when the EFF is voted into government on Wednesday, the 29th of May, we are going to schedule our inauguration on the 16th of June in salute of the 1976 generation. If you want us to celebrate the 1976 generation, and if you want us to give them the honor they deserve, elect the EFF on the 29th of May, because inauguration day, it is on the Youth Day. It is not a mistake that we chose a Youth Day, because the youth are going to determine on the 29th of May who becomes the government of South Africa. Comrades, when the children were falling on the 16th of June, it was Winnie Mandela who went around picking up bodies. It was Winnie Mandela who called ambulances, who drove children herself to the hospitals. The inauguration on the 16th of June, it will be a dedication to Winnie Nomzamo Madikizela Mandela. We say to Winnie, we are continuing with your militancy and your radicalism. Your children have multiplied. If there is any doubting Thomas that you have inspired a lot of young women, you must listen to our DSG articulating the position against GBV. You must listen to our national chairperson when he commands the meeting of women and women's programs in South Africa. Look at the Treasurer General who has looked after your finances, which led to the procurement of a head office that is now named after you, Winnie Mandela Headquarters. Mama, we salute you. We do everything in your name and in your honor. We go around, engage different types of people, but we know every time when we walk around, that we are the representatives of Winnie Madikizela Mandela. Today, we must all go back and remind all of our gogos, all of our mothers, that 29 May, it must be dedicated to Winnie Mandela. 29 May, we must say to Winnie, they did not make you president. The president we deserved, but your children can come and close that vacuum, because nature does not allow a vacuum. After my inauguration, I will immediately increase social grants for all grandparents to more than 4,000 per month. After my inauguration, I will increase the child support grant to 1,200 per month. After my inauguration, I will immediately send highly skilled teams of professionals to resolve the water crisis facing our communities. We can commit here that there will never be a community within the first 12 months of our government that will not have access to clean water and drinkable water. I'm here to declare that there will be water in all parts of South Africa. When we take over government on the 16th of June 2024, we will start the process of insourcing security guards and general workers in all government institutions, and there will never be a government worker who's going to be paid less than 10,000 per month. There will never be a government worker who does not have medical aid. There will never be a government worker without a pension fund. There will never be a government worker who does not have the leave days. When we take over government, we'll ensure that there is no crime in South Africa. We are declaring a war against criminals. We are declaring a war against rapists. We are declaring a war against GBV. South Africa shall be place of peace. South Africa shall be place of law and order. How do you prove that? Look at this event of the EFF. There is law and order. There is discipline amongst the members of the EFF. Comrades, when we take over, we will improve all the health facilities and ensure that all clinics open 24 hours every day. We have assigned the Gadi attorneys to go and help that woman who gave birth outside the clinic in Sukukuni because it was closed at 4 o'clock. We said they must go and help that woman to sue government. We want the government to pay because the child passed away. Comrades, we know that during the course of these elections and before, many right-wing and neoliberal organizations spread lies that the EFF will encourage illegal immigration and will immediately open our borders. It's not true. There is no border that will be opened immediately. We will work on it gradually because we have a duty to unite the whole of Africa. It's not something you wake up and just say, I don't care about what is here. Comrades, there will not be an illegal immigration in South Africa. There won't be a person without documents. Everybody in South Africa will be documented. Whether they came here for whatever reason, we are going to be an Africa-friendly government where those who come into our country, they will feel obliged to come and declare their availability in South Africa. We are committed to Pan-Africanism. We are committed to regional integration, but that does not mean that we'll encourage illegal and undocumented immigration. Everyone who is in South Africa must be documented. The EFF encourages you to take IDs so that you can be documented. How can we say that people who don't come from here must not be documented? When we said that people of Africa must come into South Africa during COVID and find the creative ways into South Africa, we were talking about those workers who were locked out of South Africa, who had documents and who had the right to be in South Africa. We are not ashamed of that statement. Every African who has got a contribution to make in South Africa, this is the home of all Africans, and all Africans will be accounted for. Every time you speak about undocumented South Africa, undocumented people, you refer to Africans. You don't talk about the Chinese, you don't talk about white people who are many in the Western Cape, who are undocumented, who are illegal in South Africa. Let us not make Africa and a black skin an easy target. You talk illegality, let it affect everyone. Comrades, that's what I said. You will have law and order. And undocumented people is not law and order. We will retain order in South Africa, and we will fight to grow the economy of Africa, because that is the only way you are going to keep these Africans where they stay. If you don't help to grow the economy of Africa, we'll still have a problem of immigration. We will not succeed alone. We must succeed together as the African continent and ultimately become a borderless Africa with one president, one currency, one military command, one parliament of Africa. So don't go around listening to people who are suffering from scaremongering. Malema tsena maZimbabwe la tlotla ka moka nna ke lwele maZimbabwe ke ba re shumala ke re ba eta mabambiri ba tsantswa le mabambiri ba ba sina mabambiri re ta ba lokisetsa mabambiri ho re tsebe hore ke ma mo South Africa. Fellow South Africans, ditsotsi tse di suspended load shedding for 2 months. They did so because elections are coming. Under the EFF government, there will not be any form of load shedding, not just for 2 months, but forever. There will never be load shedding in South Africa. Vote for electricity on the 29th of May, and please make sure you vote against load shedding. It is only the EFF that will bring to the end any form of electricity shortages and cuts. The EFF will not close the coal power station. The people of Mpumalanga and of Waterberg Lepalale region here in Limpopo must never be worried about their jobs and livelihoods. They are safe under the EFF government. The EFF government will firstly work with nations with skills and expertise in energy to enter into build, operate, transfer BOT agreements, where coal and nuclear power stations will be built for purpose and handed over after the time the state once the nations have resolved and recovered what they've invested. We are going to speak to China, we are going to speak to Russia, we are going to speak to all progressive forces to come and build power stations in South Africa. They can build them and operate them, but after 30 years, they must hand them over to the state of South Africa and exit South Africa. That is the only way we are going to guarantee electricity supply. We will establish a state-owned mining company to manage coal mines owned by Eskom. This will guarantee a steady supply of quality of coal at affordable price, essential for the operation of our power plants. We will expand Eskom generation capacity. We will not privatize it, putting an end to chronic shortages that have plagued our country for far too long. And we will do away with the disastrous policy of privatization, consolidating generation, transmission, and distribution under one unified company to streamline operations and improve efficiency. We recognize the importance of embracing renewable energy sources. That's why we will pursue a diverse mix of energy sources, including clean coal, gas, nuclear, and renewable like solar, wind, and hydro energy. Additionally, we will introduce a municipal conditional grant to support municipalities in implementing hybrid and off-grid energy solutions, promoting local energy, resilience and sustainability. Comrades, under the EFF, all schools, clinics, hospitals and police stations will be electrified. Comrades, under the EFF, there will not be a single home without electricity. Because we can afford to put electricity in each and every house. Comrades, under the EFF, will create millions of jobs and remove our children from the streets and rescue them from alcohol and drug abuse. We are the only party that plans to create full employment for everyone who's looking for a job. Other political parties, including those in provincial and national levels, are only planning to solve less than 20% of the job crisis in South Africa. Young people must read the manifesto of all the political parties and will realize that it is only the EFF that aims to create full employment, and it will be quality jobs. We will create state-owned construction companies, state-owned roads company, state-owned housing company, and through these millions of jobs will be created. As we need to fix our roads, we need to build houses for our people, and we need to rehabilitate our railway links. Here in Limpopo, there are opportunities for jobs in agriculture and livestock farming, in infrastructure development, and in tourism. And once the EFF takes over, we'll develop schooling system and create employment opportunities in all of those sectors. We are going to ensure that the massive development of factories and industries happen, to ensure that we manufacture developed products and completed products, finished products in South Africa. Comrades, we are going to make sure that no government department retrenches the workers. Any department that seeks to retrench the workers is going to be the enemy of the government of the EFF. We are going to rescue the post office. We are going to rescue the SABC. We are going to rescue Transnet. We are going to rescue PRASA. We are going to make sure that Dinel continues to function, because Pravin Gordhan is going to be history after the 29th of May. Pravin Gordhan has collapsed all the state-owned enterprises. Baswa, Batoyando, Mutale, Shayandima, Musina, Malamulele, Namafuani, Bakotuda Mishumo, Boanganea, Kausa Shuma Fezi, Auda Mishumo, Boanganea, because Mishumo, Iko Fiwa, Ma ANC. So, the EFF is going to make sure that the youth of Collins Chavani, the youth of Tulamela, the youth of Makado get jobs in all those municipalities. We are saying to our people, you must never fool yourself and say, Cyril Ramaphosa, Diwayani, Hauna Mutwange, is not from amongst us. He's a sellout who did nothing for the people of Vembe and for the people of Limpopo. So we don't know Cyril. That one belongs to Minel family, belongs to Oppenheimer family, belongs to the Ruperts. He does not belong to us. Comrades, we are going to give uniform to all our children in schools. We must make sure uniform is free of charge. And activate colleges, we must make sure, and university, that the courses offered are relevant to our economy. Why is there no short courses which teach us poultry farming, pig farming, goat farming, and vegetable farming? Why is agriculture dominated by ZZ2 in Limpopo? We are going to bring to an end the domination of ZZ2 of our agriculture economy and of our land. Comrades, we are going to give our people houses, and our houses are going to be in good condition. Our houses are going to have 3 bedrooms. Our houses will have a dining, a kitchen, and a bathroom inside with a flushing toilet. Ageleboche maka, maabane re tsofa, kukura makole, le mokhalabe wa ke tlile le bona mo mokhalabe wa o disabled. Ke tsoba fa ntlo ya maema odimo maabane. Ke be ke nyaka o le bontsha hore ro ga dintlo tse di jwang re le EFF. Ha ona ntlo e ka tlhokang metsi, ha ona ntlo e ka tlhokang toilet ya flusha, ha ona ntlo e leng hore e ka se be le motlakase. Dintlo ka moka o tshwana le ntlo ya kokora makgole yo ba le passage ka moare ho re divide di activities. Rofa bana dijo ko dikolo, re ba fe breakfast, re ba fe lunch, he ba fita ka gae ba tlo kry-a supper ka re oketsa tšhelete ya bokuku to 4,000 and re oketsa tšhelete ya bana to 1,000. Comrades, ba ka no le botša maaka ba re ba le tlišetša NHI. NHI ke porimatlong a se nnete. They are just saying you are going to go to the hospitals free of charge. They are lying. They were signing it because it was an election gimmick. They were playing with the feelings of our people. We will introduce a national health care system that will have clinics that operate 24/7, that will have ambulances, that will have doctors, that will have nurses, and will ensure that those clinics do not close at 4 o'clock. this story that they are unemployed doctors will come to an end. There will never be an unemployed doctor in South Africa. So I want to say to you again, clinic ya bula 24/7 kwa Johannesburg municipality re bula le MMC wa rena. So a re bolele fela a re di promise re dia di commitment. How shall I EFF morale? How shall I the promises? Re ushala commitment morale. Comrades, Pascal Uchamaka, Harbulalaka Winsosa, the security, lady cleaner, Redile, Kagua Johannesburg municipality, Redile, Kavets University, and many other universities with our student mob command, with our fearless young people. The cleaners in most universities are insourced. Under the EFF, they are all going to be insourced. We want them insourced even at the University of Limpopo. We want them insourced at UNISA. We want them insourced at TUT, at Capricorn FET, and all the FETs. Comrades, 350 elali kirian, regasi cancel, ichwela pili, maralo tomo we kriya we agadi qualification. Alisa togola ulekana. Auna urmutu abeli metriki, afiwe chelete ya utona luas na metriki. Reclodian tori bichangoriki graduate grant. Deu katena skolo, basu femereko, wa demonstrator ke khalo umaketa. Reclodian la ko rupatele lor uchwa skolo. There is what we call graduate grant that is going to be given to the youth of South Africa. Comrades, I am not here to launch a manifesto. I am here to conclude the campaign of the EFF. I am here to say to you, we have run a good race. We are here today because we ran a very successful campaign. The ground forces of the EFF have made everybody aware that there is a child called the EFF who must be given an opportunity to lead. Comrades, we must go back home now and go and continue to convince our people. Comrade Fani, your mandate from Mulungisi Madonse is to make sure that each and every member of Mulungisi Madonse battalion brings no less than 20 people out on the election day. As the youth, as the students don't go to vote alone, you must make sure that you bring no less than 20 people with you to go and vote for the EFF. Bring your parents out, bring your cousins out, bring your siblings out, bring your friends, your neighbors, colleagues, and everyone to come out in their numbers to vote for the EFF. For these remaining days, we should all intensify the work. No one must leave here and say, no, we are done. Our rally was successful. We have already won the elections. We have not won the elections. We are starting now. We start from here. We are marching straight to Pretoria to take over the Union building. Fighters, any of the leaders who lie and say they are party agents when they are no party agents, that is counter-revolution. You are not different from planted spies. any leader that says there is transport and the transport is full and the TG must pay and pay for things that do not happen, that is counter-revolution. We must go out and take our voters out and transport them to the voting station. Do not lie, do not over-impress, be honest to the organization so that we can help you where there are shortcomings. Do not play a hero, do not seek personal glorification, do not seek personal praise. Work honestly and work for the movement, and at all times tell the truth and nothing else but the truth. Fighters, this is the time of the party agents to take over. A party agent is a person who is punctual. A party agent is a person who's dressed properly in a respectful manner. Party agents must have communication skill, including communicating nicely, even to those who don't vote for the EFF. You can't be a party agent and be rude. You must love your people, you must hug them, even if you know that this voter said he's not going to vote for EFF. Put them in the EFF transport, because you must become so familiar with them such that when they arrive there, the ANC voters, out of your politeness, but comrades, ra khopela ra tsiba hore mo rena ho na le ba bangwe ba o tshwana le Jacob Zuma ba o se tsebe dinomoro yalo ga ni jwalo di-party agent o nyaka dinomoro o tsebe dinomoro o tsebe o thakantšha ka speedy o ba botse gore hey I stop and towards yona are recounting again. So you can't be a party agent without a numeracy skill. You have to know the palo. O senyehile lo tse di a utswa e ba ka kry-a o sa tsebe dipalo bo o bethana mo pele ao wa bethela matsogo bokgodu. Comrades, you must report honestly. A party agent cannot leave a voting station before counting is concluded. A party agent must not sit at the door when they are counting. You must see each and every ballot that they are counting. And if the electoral officer says you must go and sit at the door and not observe the counting, you must stop that counting. You must disrupt that counting until the seniors are called to come and intervene. No one must stop a party agent from seeing each and every ballot paper that is counted. When they say EFF, EFF, ANC, if you don't see properly, bring it back. I didn't see the ANC. Let me see. We don't want cowards to be party agents. We want fearless fighters. But the presiding officer, Baba Mabona, the principal Jalina, Baletiba Mafogodi Alina, Levala Jewe, Uskamu Chava, as the principal, Halikua, the presiding officer, when I was a student, Omusadi, Omuna Wamuti, Opapa Watu, to allow Chava presiding officer, take them head on and defend the ballots of the EFF. Comrades, please make sure you execute this responsibility with care. I want to say to all our guests who came to greet us, thank you very much. We support you and you must continue to fight. Our victory on the 29th of May is a victory for the people of Palestine. We are going to vote to liberate the people of Palestine. Palestine shall be free if the EFF is the government of South Africa. The EFF is going to remove the Israeli embassy in South Africa. The EFF will not allow any company to sell products from Israel. The same goes to McDonald's, Pick and Pay, Truworths, everything, Woolworths. We don't want products which have got blood of innocent women and children of Palestine. The people of Palestine, do not get discouraged. We are coming to join you to fight for your self-determination. Comrades, as I conclude, I want to thank our leaders all over South Africa. I want to thank the ground forces of South Africa. I want to thank the officials of the EFF, and special thanks to our Secretary General, who was serving as a national coordinator of election. I've never seen a man who works on a detail like our Secretary General. He will give you information readily available on what is happening where and who is responsible for what. So all of you comrades, you worked very hard. Go back to your provinces where you are deployed as leaders. Come back to us with victory. When you come back from your deployment, please don't come to Masakane. I will be at Union Building. Arrive at the Union Building. That is my new address. That's where you're going to find me when you come from your deployment. I want to thank my beautiful wife. I want to thank my 3 children who gave me an opportunity to come and serve the people of South Africa. They allowed themselves to be fatherless for the last 3 months. Every man with a strong woman next to him is bound to succeed. My wife is very supportive. My wife is always encouraging us to do the right thing. My wife is up there by the grandstand with my 3 children. One of them is called Ratana. On Tuesday, he was distributing EFF t-shirt at St. David's there, and the whites were shocked. It's all in the family. I'm not saying he's going to be a leader, don't kill him young. I'm just saying he knows he has to serve his people. My family knows that we don't boast about anything. We humble ourselves and we don't demand VIP status where we go. We don't display opulence because our people are struggling. When you display opulence in front of the rest of the poor masses of our people, what are you saying to their poverty? I was saying to my wife that if I don't arrange a special transport for my 3 aunts who are here, who have been loyal to me, who have always supported me and appreciated everything. I was telling her that if I don't organize transport for them, they are going to go into the EFF buses. They will never demand any special treatment because our grandmother did not bring us up like that. We were always asked to be very humble. When I was telling her the story before we came here, we were watching TV. The next thing we see Manitra Fina on TV with the masses going up and down. Organize the transport board. Masses. Why? We come from a humble family. I say to my mother-in-law and all of my in-laws, continue to encourage your child to do the good thing. We are encouraged to call you as family. Today, you are sitting here with our big family. We are nothing without this stadium. These people are what make us to be who we are. Comrade Deputy President, we've done everything humanly possible. We've been everywhere. We've spoken in different languages. Comrade Deputy President, we've followed the manual as was presented before us. We've gone door to door. We've done canvassing sheets. We've spoken to South Africans. There is nothing we've not done to speak to the people of South Africa. Now it is in the hands of the people of South Africa. Now the people of South Africa must decide if they want unemployment. They must decide if they want load shedding. They must decide if they want to remain landless. The people of South Africa, it is now in your hands. We live here very proud that we did everything to make our generation very proud. All of you who are here, your names will be called when the books of history are read, that you took a stand and said you are going to fight for economic freedom in our lifetime. Let's go out, let's go in our numbers, let's mobilize our people, the ground forces of the EFF. Now is the time for economic freedom in our lifetime. Now we have a responsibility to vote for the government of the people, for the people, to vote for the people's education. Amanda! 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 Viva EFF, viva! Viva EFF, viva! Aule EFF, aule! Aule EFF, aule! Tata EFF, tata! Tata EFF, tata! Aule Musoma Ukodi, aule! Aule Musoma Ukodi, aule! Aule Musoma Ramaphosa, aule! Aule Musoma Tabata, aule! Forward to victory, forward! Forward to victory, forward! Yaba Savannah!
Rushing towards the stage, celebrating at the end of the Telatuba rally that's been happening. It's happening, in fact, at the new Pitamogaba Stadium. That's in Polokwane, in Limpopo. A short time ago, Julius Malema, the leader of the party, basically giving them their marching orders, saying each and every one of them who goes out to vote next Wednesday must bring a friend. If you are somewhere in the leadership of the organization, bring at least 20 people with you to go and vote EFF on the day. He said they've fought a good fight during this election campaign and said the EFF will remove what he called the government of liars. He also repeated, for example, on the issue of unemployment, the proposal for the introduction of a graduate tax. Everyone's not tax, but grant. We all talk about the introduction of a basic income grant, but the EFF is saying we should have a scaled thing where, based on your level of education, then the allocation will be made. Someone with just a matric, for example, would get less than someone with an undergrad qualification, and so it would go. But the EFF pretty determined that they too are in it to win it. In the last general election, this was in 2019, they got about 10% of the vote, and some predictions are that they will be very crucial to any sort of negotiation around a coalition, especially for the ANC if it dips below 50%. But all of that will be decided by you next Wednesday, the 29th of May. Malaika, your key takeaways, having listened to Julius Malema today.
So one of the things that I find very interesting about this Julius's presentation at the Telatuba rally is that it was very youth-centric.
Yeah.
So he spoke a lot about the youth, youth unemployment, youth, proposals that the EFF has for dealing with youth unemployment, the benefits that youth will get from a DA government and so on. It's a very youth-centric presentation, and it makes sense, right? Both the IEC as well as the political parties in the country have been very focused on the youth vote. Even in the May IEC voter registration drive and the last one that was in February, the issue of getting young people to go and vote has been a very strong one. And in fact, the IEC did confirm that from the voter registration drives, 77% of all the new registered voters are young people. So that demographic is certainly very important, and I think Julius does very well to play into that, and he understands that very well. But the EFF has also historically positioned itself as a party of young people.
Yeah.
And this is very interesting, Tamile, because we're talking about how 11 years ago, when the EFF was founded in 2013, the entire leadership of the EFF were all in their 30s.
They were young.
Very, very
they'd
young.
Just been expelled by the ANC.
Just 2 years before, 2011 and so on. So these are very, very young people. And Julius now is 43. You've got, people in their 44, 45, they're in their mid-40s. All of them. They're not so young anymore, right? And it's still being able to appeal to young voters, being able to appeal to young people. And it's a very scientific argument that Julius is making, because in fact, the youth vote in South Africa is a very important vote. And it has historically been a vote of people who actually don't go out to vote.
Yeah.
So Malaka, how impressive then has the growth of the EFF in successive elections been? We're a majority youth country, right? Majority of that youth is black and still disadvantaged to a degree. And the EFF says that is who they want to fully liberate, if we can use that phrase. Does that tie up with how they've done 6% in 2014,
10%.
about 10% in 2019?
Look, I mean, I think the EFF it's actually one of the few parties that are still growing. If you look at that, the statistics with the DA and the ANC from 2014 and 2019, they have been seeing a significant decline in both of them. Both of them are seeing a significant decline. The EFF, on the other hand, and the Freedom Front Plus are the parties that have actually been seeing a growth. IFP, it's just been round about the same. They've maintained, really. And when it's it's just a very small margin of it. But the EFF and the Freedom Front Plus are the parties that are actually growing in South Africa. And so I do think that the EFF, for a party that is just 11 years old, has done pretty well, fairly well for itself. It's doing quite well, but perhaps not as much as I would have thought, because the EFF is a very popular party, and their politics are very popular politics. And given that we are a country of such young people, one would have expected to have a much more exponential increase in terms of the number of support.
If they don't grow in this election, would they take it harder than, say, a decline, a plateau for ANC and DA? Because when you've grown in 2 elections and you're the EFF, not being able to continue that pattern would be quite a knock.
I think it would be a very serious knock to the EFF. And I think, we've been hearing people say, the statement that even the EFF uses is that 2024 is our 1994. 2024 is our 1994. And there's something very important about that statement that they're making, right? Because it's also a statement that speaks to the generation of young people who are born in the new dispensation, right? To say, what you guys might not know that happened in 1994, you are expected to do this in 2024. You might not have been there. You might not have voted. And it's speaking to a lot of us. Many of us,
it gives them a focus,
we were not there in 1994.
Yeah.
We didn't vote in 1994, right? And so it's almost as if it's almost like a clarion call and a reminder that you must do. It's so historical, it's so important, it's so symbolic that you do now what was done at that time, because it's almost like a new liberation struggle in itself, right? And so I do think that the EFF, if it does not do well in this election, it will be a very, very serious blow to the organization. And in fact, one of the things that we also must factor in, Tembegile, is the MK party. We really can't pretend it's not a key player. And in fact, research now is saying that the MK party is a bigger threat to the EFF than it is even to the ANC and the DA, right?
Would that be limited to KZN? Because the suggestion is that in KZN, they will take away significant support from the EFF. But nationally, how well has the MK done in positioning itself to resonate with people there who may not necessarily be followers of a Jacob Zuma, but be tired of the older options?
So look, I mean, we see, for example, in Limpopo, the former provincial leader of Action SA, I think it's Lipiri. His name it's Lipiri. I forgot his name, but the name is Lipiri. He's the former provincial leader of Action SA. He left to join MK party, right? So I do think even something like that, it's quite symbolic that even a party as young as Action SA is losing its own members and leader at such a high level to the MK party. I don't think it is that strong. It has made such a strong a showing and a presence in other provinces, including even Limpopo, really. I mean, they took the big leader, and that matters, but it hasn't really made a significant showing as it has in Gauteng and in KZN. Because, we often talk about KZN, but we don't talk enough about Gauteng. MK Party has made a significant inroads in the Gauteng province, and this is a battlefield for the election, right? So it's almost also very telling that the MK Party is making serious inroads in provinces that are a battlefield, which is KZN and Gauteng.
I want to talk about what Julius was saying about immigration into South Africa by other Africans. It seemed that he was a lot clearer now about the fact that you can't just come in. You have to be documented. He was saying that without actually using the words
I think
documented.
he used the word
Accounted for. Which
So-
is a change.
So it's a change. So, even when you listen to the entire presentation that Julius just made, and I think Thembekile puts it very well, he has almost mellowed, right? In a way, there's like a mellowing that is happening there, which I think is not so much about the mellowing of the radicalism, but a growing into the realization, right? And the understanding now of governance, right? Because it's very easy. A lot of the things that the EFF would make a lot of pronouncements about were things that you would expect from opposition. But the EFF is no longer just opposition now. They govern in the city of Ekurhuleni. They are in government in city of Johannesburg. And he was actually counting their successes because they've got the portfolio, the health portfolio in the city of Johannesburg.
So
And
he
he's
knows
talking
what it
about that.
takes.
Now he knows what governance looks like. He knows what it means to be in government, right? It's not the same thing as being in opposition. And so I think part of that watering down of a few things comes from that. But I also wonder, when I listen to Julia speaking about the migrant question, the EFF has historically been very strong and very deliberate on the issue of South Africa is for everyone, open the borders, everyone must come in. But South Africans they don't have an appetite for those politics.
Particularly voters,
Yes,
the
particularly
EFF
the EFF
speaks to.
voters that he speaks to, right? Because these are like
If you look at the
working
rise
class-
of the PA and all of that.
Yes, but you're also looking at the profile of the EFF voter, largely working class, poor working class people in the townships and so on. And that's where you see a lot of antagonisms between migrants and locals. It's in those communities. And so I think Julius has read the mood over the years, and he has listened to his own voters and to listen to the sentiment in South Africa. He's pretty good at reading the room, right?
Smart,
Because in a way, he does not want to alienate or to move away too far from the script, because the EFF should be a Pan-Africanist organization. It is a Sankarist, Leninist organization and so on. So it can't deviate completely from its own politics and say, we don't want this, right? And so he has to find a language that is a bit more palatable. Because after he says that they must be accounted for, he then says, but Africa is for all of us, it's for Africans and so on and so forth. So he's not going to say what he previously used to say, which is that open the border, everyone must come in. It's not a borderless Africa like he used to say, but he's still, very strong on the sentiment that of this Pan-Africanist ideal of an Africa that belongs to all Africans. But I do think that it's very interesting how the language now has kind of like moved from open for everyone to now people must be accounted for, because without saying it clearly, what he's saying is that immigrants in South Africa must be documented.
That's right. They've got to be legal,
they've got to be
otherwise,
documented, and they should be, and that's what he's saying. So I think that kind of shift and change, it's a reading. It's more than anything else. I think it's a reading of the sentiment, because even EFF voters themselves really punished the idea of this thing. They were unhappy about the pronouncement about the doors having to be open for everyone.
How big an issue is immigration in South Africa now? And is it perhaps a bigger issue in this election than it's ever been?
Actually, the immigration issue is much bigger than I thought. It's a much bigger issue than I thought. I mean, I recently released a book, and one of the things that I was asking young people in the Gauteng, and it was about the Gauteng province, right? And I was looking at why young people are voting for the ANC and so on. But I asked them, what are some of the key issues that you find, particularly in the Gauteng province? And I will be honest with you, Jane, I was very surprised to realize that young people actually really put migration as such a big issue at the same level as unemployment and crime, right?
Really?
So migration is a very serious
But
issue.
they also see them as linked, right?
Yeah,
People do draw a link,
yeah.
whether fairly or unfairly.
In fact, but
so increasingly you are seeing links between crime and immigrants, aren't you? I mean, it seems to be getting a lot more exposure.
No, but you know what has happened? I mean, very recently, Minister of Police, Begitele, did in fact release the prison statistics that clearly indicated that most of our prison population is not in fact immigrants, as it has always been said, or it's always been perpetuated, or the narrative, which he's also been one of the people who's responsible for perpetuating this. I think I wrote an article about this on our Eyewitness News website. So I did give some reflection on this. So what has been happening, and it's with all political parties, to answer the question of Thembekile about how important migration is. Think back to the last year in particular. The issue of migration has been very strong with all political parties. In fact, in November last year, the provincial secretary of the ANC, TK Mwiza, and Panyaza Lesufi, who's the chairperson of the ANC, but also the premier of Gauteng, at a press conference of the ANC, spoke about the issue, trying to allude to the idea that, migrants, migration is a very serious crisis, but also making that link between unemployment and immigration, crime and immigration and so on. And it's a language that we see across the board with all political parties. In fact, I think, I dare say the one party that has been very progressive on how it deals with the issue of migration has in fact been the Democratic Alliance, quite frankly, right? Because the Democratic Alliance has never had a strong anti-immigrant stance. It's just, it doesn't. Of course, we can argue about the very economistic approach to it, right? That is about get them documented so that they can work and all of that and so on, and all of that, right? But I mean, the DA has had a very stance that is slightly more progressive than many other parties and has not played into the immigrant policy, into the migration card and the scary migrant card and all of that. The DA has done well in that regard, and I think it's commendable that it has done that.
I think also, I mean, they weren't holding their rallies today, but Action SA and Patriotic Alliance have a stronger anti-foreign national, undocumented foreign nationals, they say, policy, right? And you wonder how much that's going to work out for them. Is that where we'll be able to gauge just how important the issue is?
I mean, in fact, we already do have the evidence in history. Action SA, even when it came into play, its biggest card and its biggest politics were always about the immigrant question, the migrant question. And you'll remember that this happened shortly after Herman Mashaba had just been the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. And even when he was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, the question of the immigrant question was always very strong for him. It was clean up the city, and those hygienization politics, the streets are dirty, and these migrants, they must go, and all of that thing.
Which stoked real fears of xenophobia, right?
Which did at some point. Right? I mean, a lot of human rights organizations really came out and condemning this kind of language that he was using. But I mean, Action SA as an organization was always also very largely founded on that. It's in the seed of the founding of that organization. And it did very well in its very first election. It did very, very well. So we already do know that the migrant question does draw in the voter, right?
And people like to be able to blame somebody else.
Yes, yes. But also, I mean, and one of the things that I've said, and yet again, is also something that is in an article that I also wrote on Eyewitness News on our website. It's about how government failures in South Africa have historically been, so migrants have always been used as scapegoats for the failures of our government, right? Where government is failing at the level of policing and community safety, where government is failing at the level of creation of employment and so on, migrants have always historically been the easiest scapegoat to be blamed for this. And I think one of the things that the EFF does, and even with what Malema does now, with trying to inject this idea of, immigrants as our brothers and sisters, as people who are here for good reasons and so on, is to try and rewrite that narrative, which unfortunately even the ANC over time has ridden on. And it's, I think...
Let's circle back for a moment, because we've heard from the president of the ANC, we've heard from the leader of the EFF, Julius Malema, this afternoon. The two of them, we keep coming back to this, are expected, should it happen, that we need a coalition at the national level to come together. How would they have to work around that? Because even in the speech, Julius Malema has made it clear he's not a big fan of Cyril Ramaphosa.
Look, I mean, we know Julius's position on the ANC, and yet the ANC and the EFF govern in Ekurhuleni together, right? We know the position of the feelings of the EFF on the ANC, and they govern in other municipalities. They work together in Johannesburg and so on. So I do think that ultimately, when it comes down to the wire, they do somehow, even if they don't find completely common ground, because even when they do govern together, there's still a lot of it's volatile and it's all of that and so on. But they do at least come together and form a government, right? And we see that in the city of Ekurhuleni, like I'm saying, we see it in the city of Johannesburg. So I don't think that an ANC and EFF coalition is completely out of the question. I think it's actually a more likely coalition than any other coalition, really. It's not only is it more likely to be the coalition, but it's also the more likely coalition to work, because despite it's been tried, but also the EFF and the ANC have got a little bit more in common than the EFF, let's say, and the DA or the EFF.
Are they more similar than they let on?
Yes. Quite more similar than that. In fact, I mean, even take, for example, with the NHI, right? The EFF in Parliament did not voted against the proposal of the NHI at the time, as that the ANC had put there. But the argument was not about the principle of having universal health coverage, right? It was about the modalities. And it's a lot of the things, the EFF and the ANC, a lot of their disagreements are more about the modalities than the principle of what needs to be done.
Of the land question,
yes.
EFF says
yes.
state custodianship.
Yes.
The ANC says, well, yes, let's redistribute it,
yes.
land expropriation, but not quite to that model.
Yes, so it's always about, a lot of their disagreements fundamentally come down to modalities. It's not really a principle, it's not really at a deeper principle level, right? It's not very deeply principle. There are some ideological differences, but a lot of the things about which they differ and that they differ fundamentally, it's about modalities more than it is. And whereas it's a different with the DA, because there it will be a complete difference of even a minimum program, a minimum agreement is not even there.
And that's what we're going to be listening to tomorrow, the IFP out in force, DA out in force, all the last push before the elections on Wednesday. As I said, right at the beginning, a week is a long time in politics. Any expectations out there, any surprises on the horizon, you think?
I'll tell you, I've got a concern. I have a concern, really. Tembekile, yesterday, yesterday or the day before yesterday, was flighted yesterday. President Jacob Zuma went to speak to the BBC about the Constitutional Court judgment, right? That clearly, and he knew this judgment was bound to come out this way, right? That he's not eligible to in the National Assembly. He goes to the BBC and he says to the BBC, I am a freedom fighter and I'm going to fight this decision, right? This is the decision of the apex court of the land. And he says he's a freedom fighter, invoking that language and that memory of armed struggle. I'm a freedom fighter and I'm going to fight this decision. And I think for me, it's a bit concerning because for one thing, we do remember that the July riots, right, were anchored to a degree. I mean, of course, we know there were other socio-economic issues involved, but the name of Zuma and the arrest of Zuma was the big thing that sparked this thing, right? So we do know the capacity of violence that can happen in the name of the former president. And I think for him to go just few days, 5 days before elections, to say that as a freedom fighter he's going to fight for this, it's not a democracy, it's unconstitutional, knowing the volatility of the situation that we find ourselves in, but knowing also the capacity of his supporters to engage in violence in his name.
Do you think that comment was a threat then?
I don't know how to read it. I'm not sure how to read it, but I do know that I'm disturbed by it because I think...
to use that platform
use that platform also, right? And even the language. I mean, the language, threat also comes from the mood and the time and space. You already do have a sentiment in the MK party that, Zuma is this victim. He's being abused. He's being chastised and all of that and so on. And so for him to then come out, and he's historically always played the victim card very well. It has done very well for him, the victim card.
He is a master strategist too.
He is. From 2006, he's been playing this victim card, right? And so I think now he's coming out again, playing this victim card, but at a very dangerous level, because now he's doing it so soon after the riots, but also at a time when political violence is so intense in KZN, and political violence is spreading across the country. As we see, it's even happening in Limpopo now, between the EFF and the ANC. People are being shot at campaign trails and so on. So I just think the political moment in South Africa right now is very tense, it's very volatile. And for a former leader to go out on a platform like that and say the Constitutional Court, basically, the judges are wrong, they are undemocratic, and all that they're doing is wrong, and he's going to fight it because he's a freedom fighter. Freedom fighters fight. We know how freedom fighters fight. I think invoking that kind of memory and that language, for me, Tembekile, is something that I'm worried about. I really do. I don't think we would degenerate to a point of such extreme violence, but I think the possibility does stand when a former leader who has historically been a face of violence being meted out goes out and says something like that. It's worrying.
I think we leave it on that note. Malaika, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Jane, always a pleasure.
As I said, tomorrow we're doing the DA. We're going to be focusing on that and covering all the other events that are happening. And we hope that you join us, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
We did it!
It was done.